Well, as we open our story today and we see all the opposition that was awaiting Jesus in the land of the Gerasenes, we should also remember the terrible storm that we saw last week that he and his disciples had to sail through to get here. It's as if everything was against them, trying to keep them away. But God had a plan. God had a person here on the other side of the Sea of Galilee who really needed to meet Jesus. He was in desperate need of help, and he was also willing to receive that help. Now, the region of the Gerasenes, or Gadarenes as Matthew calls it, is a loose term used to describe the land on the eastern or southeastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. The towns of Gerasa and Gadara were two of the 10 cities of the Decapolis. This was a mostly Gentile area with a strong Hellenistic influence. It's thought that some Jews also lived here, but not ones who were loyal and obedient to God, not practicing Jews, but rather ones who had perhaps backslidden a little bit from their Jewish faith and roots. This was a pagan land that would have attracted people who were less dedicated to God. In fact, it may well be the land to which the prodigal son ran away and spent his inheritance in wild living and ended up with a job taking care of pigs. These animals were certainly very common on the eastern shores of the lake, where Gentiles were in the majority. And of course, pigs were considered unclean, non-kosher, and off limits to all Jews. Now, in our story today, we see Jesus venturing outside of his usual Jewish territory of Galilee, showing that all people were valuable to him, not just Jews, but everyone. He's also paving the way for his followers, who would one day take the good news of the gospel to the ends of the earth, to all people groups, and make disciples of them. Now, Mark tells us that as Jesus steps out of the boat on the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee, a man possessed by an evil spirit comes running to meet him and falls on his knees in front of him. This man is the reason they have come, and God has a wonderful plan for his life. But first, a spiritual battle has to be waged and won. Ephesians 6:12 says, "Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." And you'll discover that 3 of the gospel writers include this account in their narratives. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all include it, and they all have slightly different details, so we're going to draw on those different accounts today. Mark gives us the most detail, so I've used him quite a lot. But Luke has already told us of several different occasions when Jesus cast out demons, such as in the synagogue in Capernaum. So this is not the first time that we see him confronting evil spirits. But from what we read in this story, we sense that the enemy's stronghold amongst the Gerasenes is more entrenched than in Galilee. Here, in Gentile territory, Jesus meets the greatest challenge to his authority so far over the demons. Now, the man's appearance is strange. He's not wearing any clothes, and his body is cut and scarred from the many times that he's cried out and injured himself with stones. His history is also bizarre. For many years, he's been living here among the tombs, with the decaying and the dead, finding shelter in the caves which were the burial grounds outside the town, away from civilization. All the townspeople are afraid of him because he's very violent and very dangerous. No one wants to see him or come near him. In the past, some have tried to control his wild behavior by chaining him down and guarding him, but to no avail. His phenomenal brute-like strength has snapped all of his fetters. And so here he is, banished to the place of the dead, where he looks and lives like a wild animal, a total outcast from all of society. Now, while still at a distance, Jesus catches sight of the man as he's trying to harm himself and crying out in distress. And Jesus instantly recognizes the work of the evil one, and he commands the unclean spirit to come out of him. The man then runs towards Jesus and falls on his knees. The evil spirit realizes that he has met his match in Jesus. He's up against the one who rules sovereignly over all the power of the universe, both natural and supernatural. He recognizes Jesus for who he is, and he is afraid and cries out, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." And this reminds us of the words of James 2:19, which says, "You believe that there's one God? Well, good. Even the demons believe that and shudder." And these demons are certainly shuddering. They are afraid of Jesus. You know, it's interesting that although many people rejected Jesus and his claims to be the Son of God, the demons always knew who he was and were always afraid of him. They were afraid of his power. They knew that they were no match for Jesus and that their time was short. Jesus has compassion on the man. The poor man in such distress, who everybody is rejected and turned away from, everyone is shunned. Jesus comes near and he calls him, he asks him his name. Although everyone else is afraid of him and runs away, Jesus takes a personal interest in him and talks with him. He's not afraid. He doesn't leave like everyone else. This man is the whole reason that Jesus has sailed across the lake and come to the land of the Gerasenes. Now, it's been so long since anyone has used the man's real name that the only name he can recall is his nickname that people use, which is Legion, a word that conjures up an image of 6,000 harsh Roman soldiers that could be seen all over the Roman Empire. It seemed to both the man himself and to all those who knew him and gave him this name that there were untold numbers of evil spirits waging war in his soul, controlling him and treating him brutally. He didn't have just one demon, but a whole regiment of them doing battle against his soul. And as Jesus commands the demons to leave, they beg him not to send them into the abyss. Revelation 9 speaks of this as being the bottomless pit, which will be their final destination and place of punishment. The spirits beg to be allowed to enter a nearby herd of pigs instead, and Jesus gives them permission. As the demons enter the pigs, they drive the animals into a frenzy, which results in them rushing down the steep hillside, headlong into the lake, where they're drowned. And Mark tells us that it was a huge herd of about 2,000 pigs. Now, this is a difficult passage for us to understand. Some people question why Jesus would allow the demons to enter the pigs, since this ultimately leads to their drowning in the lake. Well, we don't really know the answer. But it is possible that this pig herding business was an illegal one, operated by Jews who were living in rebellion against God and defying his regulations. If so, then it would be against Jewish law for them to either eat the meat or even raise the pigs in preparation for the meat going to a Gentile market. All of this would be illegal. And if this were the case, then perhaps Jesus allowed the action of the pigs as a judgment against the rebellious owners. That's one possibility. But in spite of the difficulties presented by the passage, two things become very clear as a result of what happened. First of all, the frenzied, uncontrollable action of the pigs hurtling down the hillside to their death gives everyone watching a visible demonstration of the destructive power of the demons. It reminds us of the awful damage that they have already caused the man. They're certainly a force to be reckoned with. But the man's deliverance from such evil also shows us the far greater power of God, who alone has the power to set the man free. And secondly, this action involving the pigs gives tangible proof to the man and to the disciples and herdsmen watching that the demons really have left him and that they've been destroyed in the depths of the sea, never to return and haunt him again. He need have no fear. He is a new man about to begin life all over again. And here I'm reminded of Jesus' teaching in John 10, verse 10. The thief comes only to steal and destroy and kill. But I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. Satan had stolen this man's life from him. A man made in the image of God with the potential for worshipping God and loving him as his creator and Lord had virtually been destroyed by the power of evil. The devil and his minions had just about reduced him to the state of a wild animal. But Jesus came to give him life and to make him whole. Jesus came to give him a brand new start and a life full of meaning and purpose. Now, if the herd of pigs numbered 2,000, as Mark tells us, it's possible that there may have been as many as 20 herdsmen or so taking care of them. Now, these men didn't own the animals, they were simply hired hands. And they run off, probably with a mixture of amazement and fear and concern for their own jobs. They run off to tell everybody in the local area, both in the town and countryside, what has happened. They report two things, both how the man has been cured and also how the pigs have rushed down the hillside into the lake. The result is that large numbers of local people go out to the coast of the Sea of Galilee to see for themselves what has happened. When they find Jesus and see the man who has been healed, clothed and in his right mind, sitting calmly at the feet of Jesus as he teaches him, they are afraid. Now, isn't that a strange reaction? That they see him healed and in his right mind, wearing clothes, and they are afraid. They're more afraid now after the man has been healed than they were when he was a violent and dangerous man, exiled from the community. They're afraid, like the demons were, because they see evidence of the mighty power of God. But sadly, it's not a reverent fear that was in awe of God. It's more like a fear of punishment. They're afraid of what else Jesus might do. They see him as a disturbance to the peace. Sadly, they don't realize that he is the very one who could bring them true, real, lasting peace. Isn't it sad that the Gerasenes don't rejoice as they see one of their own people cured and set free from evil? They've known this man for many years. They know how pitiful his situation has become. Jesus has done a miracle in his life. He's transformed him. He's set him free. And yet none of them are happy as they witness the truth of this miracle for themselves. They don't even stop to thank Jesus for freeing their community from a dangerous man. And isn't it tragic that they have the Messiah right there among them and don't just follow the example of the healed man and sit for a while at his feet and learn from Jesus as he teaches them? They miss the opportunity of a lifetime, and it was right there in front of them. All that the Gerasenes can think about is what has happened to the pigs. They care more about their livestock than they do about a human life that has been delivered from evil. They've seen God's power at work, but instead of responding with faith, They respond with fear and ask Jesus to leave. And he does. He doesn't stay where he's not welcome. What a tragedy, and what a wasted opportunity. Apart from the man who has been healed, Jesus doesn't find any faith here among the people. Spiritually, they're as cold as the tombs where the healed man used to live. They are dead cold. There's no life, there's no enthusiasm, there's no joy, there's no faith. As Jesus and his disciples prepare to leave and return to Galilee, the man who has been healed gets up to go with them in the boat. He doesn't want to let Jesus out of his sight because his life has been dramatically changed and he doesn't want to go back to his old way of life. He believes in Jesus with all his heart and simply wants to be with him and follow him. He wants to be his disciple like the others. He's experienced his power firsthand and he will never be the same again. Unlike the rest of his community, he hasn't responded with fear. He has responded with faith. Now, of course, Jesus is glad that he wants to be his disciple and follow him. But rather than take him back to Galilee with him, Jesus has a special task for this man, a task that no one else can do. He has a special calling that is unique, and that is to be a witness for the Lord right there in the land of the Gerasenes, a place where Jesus and his disciples could no longer stay. Now, it might be easier for the healed man to go to a new place and tell others about Jesus. But he has a unique opportunity here among his own people, which nobody else has. They know his past life. They know what he used to be like. And they can see the transformation that Jesus has worked in his life. And that will be a powerful witness for the Lord. It's something that only he can do. Jesus tells him, return home and tell how much God has done for you. And the man does exactly that. Mark 5 tells us that he returned not only to his hometown, but travels through the whole region of the Decapolis, telling everyone he can what God has done for him. And people are amazed. This man, who everybody thought was a nobody, becomes a missionary for the Lord among the Gentiles. What a wonderful transformation, made possible by the love and power of God. Now, we are blessed to have a sequel to this story. It's not in Luke, but Mark records it for us. Although Jesus and his disciples have to leave at this time, it's not their last visit. The healed man was so effective in his witness that it actually changed the attitude of the whole region towards Jesus. In Mark 7, we see Jesus return to the Decapolis, and this time the people bring to him a man who is both deaf and mute. Jesus, of course, gladly heals him, but this time the response of the people is very different. Instead of them being afraid of Jesus and asking him to leave, Mark 7:37 records, people were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. He makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. What a wonderful difference from the last visit. And in a summary statement in Matthew 4:25 we read, large crowds from Galilee and the Decapolis, Jerusalem and Judea, and the region across the Jordan followed him. That's the land of the Gerasenes. Large crowds became followers of the Lord Jesus. And it all happened because of the faithful testimony of this one man who everybody wrote off as being a nobody, a violent, dangerous man, an outcast of their community. God used him and used him to transform the lives of many people in his community. So what can we learn from this story today? First of all, the story is a reminder of the value of each individual person to God. Jesus knew that the Gerasenes as a whole would reject him on this first visit. But he also knew that there was one man there who everyone else had given up on, who would respond to the love of God as shown in the Lord Jesus. He would respond to his love once he'd been delivered from the power of evil. Jesus had mercy on that one poor man and set him free. And it was worth all the trouble and the difficult journey for that man's life to be changed. Jesus looked beyond the intense storm that tried to keep him and the disciples away. He looked past the hostility of the evil spirits that bound the man and the hostile attitude of all the people in the vicinity. He looked deep into the man's heart. He set him free, and then he taught him about the love of God and made him a disciple. It was worth it all just for one person to come to faith. It was worth it all because Jesus loved him. And you know, that's how he feels about each one of us too. Jesus would have gone to the cross for each one of us if we were the only person in the world. He loves us that much. We are all unique and precious to him. No one is beyond his love. No one is beyond hope. He cares for each of us. He loves each of us. And he never gives up on any of us. And then secondly, this story shows us the importance of the witness of each individual person. It's a call to each of us to tell others what the Lord has done for us. We are each to be a witness in our family, in our town, in our place of work, our community, wherever God places us. We may be the only believer that God has there, just as this man was the only believer in the land of the Gerasenes at first. You know, we may be the only Bible that some people ever read. Family members and friends may never come to a church. They may never listen to an online service, but they might just listen to a story of what has happened in your life and what God has done for you, because they know you and they trust you. The Gerasenes rejected Jesus and his disciples. They didn't trust them, but they listened to one of their own people. And it was because of the faithful witness of this man that so many of them eventually came to faith in the Lord Jesus. So let's remember that each person has value. No one is beyond the reach of God's love. And let's remember that when we do come to know him, each of us has a responsibility to tell others of the great things that God has done for us.